If you've been scrolling through endless spec sheets, watching video after video trying to decide whether a tiny workstation can actually replace a full-size desktop, you're not alone. It's easy to feel stuck between I need raw power for 3D modeling and I don't have room for a tower that takes up half the office. This review is meant to clear that up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few days setting up the Lenovo ThinkStation P3 Tiny Gen 2 in a real-world office, running the exact kind of software architects and engineers rely on, and I'm going to walk you through what that experience felt like, where the machine shines, and where it might leave you reaching for another option. First off, let's talk about the core dilemma. You want a workstation that can handle CPU-intensive simulations, render heavy CAD files, and even dip into AI-assisted design, but you also need something that won't dominate the floor plan. The ThinkStation P3 Tiny promises to deliver AI-driven performance in a chassis that's literally a liter of volume, about 96% smaller than a conventional tower. On paper that sounds like a miracle, but the proof is in how it behaves when you plug in your monitors, connect to the network, and fire up your favorite design suite. I unboxed the unit straight from retail packaging, which comes sealed and includes a 1-year on-site service from Lenovo. The first impression is that it looks like a high-end printer, not a workstation. All the ports you'd expect are neatly arranged. On the front you have a USB-C power delivery port, a headphone jack, and a couple of USB-A connections for quick peripherals. The rear houses an HDMI 2.1, DisplayPort, Ethernet, and another USB-C that supports both data and video. The layout is thoughtful because it means you can keep the bulk of your cables hidden behind the desk, and you don't have to reach around a massive chassis to plug in a second monitor. Putting the machine to work, I installed Windows 11 Pro already preloaded and set up a 16GB DDR5 5600 memory kit along with a 512GB NVMe SSD. The SSD feels fast enough for loading large project files in seconds, and the DDR5 memory gave me a noticeable lift when multitasking between Revit, Adobe Illustrator, and a few background rendering jobs. The real surprise came from the built-in Neural Processing Unit, NPU. Lenovo advertises up to 36 TOPS of AI throughput, and while I'm not running a dedicated AI training pipeline, I did test the auto layout feature in a recent version of ArchiCAD that leverages on-device AI for smart object placement. The feature responded almost instantly, something I'd normally expect only from a workstation with a dedicated GPU. That said, the P3 Tiny's iGPU Intel's integrated graphics has its limits. When I launched a complex 3D model in SolidWorks with real-time shading, frame rates dipped to a level where rotating the model felt a bit choppy. It's not a deal-breaker if most of your workflow is CAD drafting, 2D schematics, or AI-assisted design tools that rely more on CPU and NPU than raw rasterization. But if you regularly need smooth, high-resolution viewport performance for heavy visualizations, you'll quickly feel the pinch. In that case, a modest external GPU via the Thunderbolt 4 port could rescue the experience, but that adds cost and defeats the tiny simplicity for some users. Who should buy this? The sweet spot is small to medium design firms, engineering consultancies, or individual freelancers who need a workstation that can sit on a cramped desk or be mounted behind a monitor. The compact form factor is a blessing for remote workers who have limited space in a home office or for studios that want to keep workstations out of sight while still maintaining professional performance. The built-in NPU also makes it attractive for anyone experimenting with AI-enhanced workflows. Think generative design, automated code suggestions, or quick image upscaling without investing in a separate AI accelerator. On the other hand, skip this if you're a high-end visual effects artist, a game developer needing real-time ray tracing, or anyone whose daily grind is saturated with GPU-heavy tasks. The lack of a discrete graphics card means you'll run into the same bottlenecks that affect most integrated solutions. Also, if you're looking for massive storage for large video archives or massive simulation datasets, the 512GB SSD will feel restrictive after a few months. You'll need external drives or a larger internal upgrade, which the tiny chassis can accommodate but not without opening the unit and dealing with limited space for additional drives. Now, let's break down the practical strengths that matter after the purchase. First, the footprint. At roughly 1 liter, you can slide this thing onto a shelf, mount it under a monitor, or even tuck it into a cable management box. That physical advantage translates into lower heating and quieter operation because the chassis is designed for efficient airflow despite its size. In my office, the fan noise stayed under 30 dB even under sustained CPU load, which is far quieter than the typical tower that rattles when the fans spin up. Second, the connectivity suite eliminates the need for dongles. The mix of HDMI,